Hello and welcome to the Columbia Daily Tribune's Courtside View Basketball Webcast, final one of the year, Steve. We're here a little earlier than we had anticipated, but Missouri goes to the first round in Omaha, loses.
Second round.
Technically the second round. Loses to Norfolk State, a number 15 seed. At the time, only the fifth time it had ever happened. Then quickly thereafter, Duke also did it. So only 6 times, I guess, out of 108 has that ever happened. What went wrong?
Well, a lot, at least at one end of the floor. Obviously, Missouri played well enough offensively to win when you score 84 points, when you shoot over 50%, when you only turn it over, I think, 8 times in the game. But the other end of the floor, defensively and rebounding, just was not good enough. I think a lot of people thought that if Missouri was going to lose at some point, it was going to be because of their inability to rebound the ball, and also their struggles defensively, which were really evident through a lot of the Big 12 season. They were last in the conference in field goal percentage defense during league play, and those things really caught up to them, obviously a lot quicker than anyone expected in the NCAA Tournament. I think Kyle O'Quinn, Norfolk State's best player, who to us I think looked really impressive, did basically what he wanted under the basket against Missouri. He made some tough shots, but he made some easy ones too, and finished with 26 points and 14 rebounds. Had some big and one plays and some big offensive rebounds that turned into points. And then I think even on the perimeter, I don't think Missouri did a good enough job contesting shots the whole game. And you see a Norfolk State team that doesn't shoot the three well made 10 of them, and that's a recipe for disaster.
They certainly didn't shoot the three well 2 days later when they play Florida and just get run out of the gym. So for Missouri, that's probably makes it a little bit even worse that this isn't a team that just like a VCU that went on a long run after they beat you. This was a team that looked like a 15 seed 2 days later. And throughout the year, you'd kind of had began to where you're almost disregarding the size differential between teams because Missouri was shorter than almost every team. And from that perspective, if you were to look at these two teams and didn't know the seeds, you would have thought from size-wise that Norfolk State was the better seed because they were bigger at every position. But, that was something that we used to think about a lot in December. But after a while, you just sort of quit worrying about it as far as Missouri was concerned because it just never seemed to make that much difference. They just outscore people. This time it did, and when you can shoot as well as Missouri shot in that game, they shot better than 50% and still lose to a 15th seed, that means something's going wrong defensively. Yeah,
and as far as the size differential goes, I mean, the reason we, I think, kind of stopped paying attention to it was because everybody else was playing small to handle them at the other end of the floor, and Norfolk State really only had one option of how to play. They're big across the board. I mean, they started 3 guys in the backcourt who are 6'5" or taller. These guys gave Missouri trouble, and I think they made it hard for the Tigers to contest. Even when they weren't in position to contest shots, those guys, the Spartans, were still able to get clean looks over the top of Missouri's smaller guards. Obviously, that size made a difference under the basket when it came to rebounding. And Kyle O'Quinn, again, I don't think can be said enough. He really looked like a pro. I mean, he made some really tough shots over Ricardo Ratliff and Steve Moore, and he came in with a little bit of buzz. I don't know that anybody really knew who he was, but he was the MEAC Player of the Year, and a guy who scouts have been watching all season as they've gone through their year, and it was pretty evident why.
And it was a very good quote.
He was, too. I think he was one of the better stories of the first weekend of the tournament.
How much does that loss affect the way that you think that Missouri's season will be judged?
Unfortunately, it changes a lot because I think this team was playing its way towards being arguably the best team in Missouri history. I mean, they were the second team to win a Big 12 tournament title. They were the second team to win 30 games in school history, and a lot of people thought, and I know a lot of people who filled out brackets around this part of the country,
and in Washington,
and in the White House, and really a lot of other places thought they could be the first Missouri team ever to go to a Final Four. There was a lot of reason to believe that. Just the way they were playing, they came in on a 5-game winning streak. They looked so dominant in Kansas City during the Big 12 tournament. Unfortunately, now though, no matter what they accomplished, and when people think of those accomplishments, they're also going to think they were one of the now 6 teams ever seeded second to lose to a 15. It's just unavoidable, and you wrote in your column that so much of the college basketball season comes down to the tournament, and it's the way it is, and it's really the way it should be. I mean, you're playing for titles, you're playing for championships, and that's where you can win those things. I do think people will look back on this season fondly because they did win a Big 12 tournament title on the way out the door of the conference, and because Frank Haith is now National Coach of the Year. I think those things will stick, but people will remember this game like they remember Northern Iowa beating Missouri when they were a 3 or 4 seed.
They were a 3 seed that year, 1990, I think.
Yeah, so those things have a way of remaining in the collective consciousness.
It's interesting because Thursday night, some of the writers went out after the press conferences, and one of them brought up that the Des Moines Register had just written a story 11 years later on what went wrong for Iowa State when they lost to Hampton. 11 years later, people still discuss. I mean, that's the magnitude of the upset. Missouri was a 21.5-point favorite. So, yeah, that kind of sticks with you. I kind of look at it like it's like a great season. It's kind of like, they had this great, nice shirt with a big mustard stain on it now. It's like you can still appreciate the shirt, but you might, mow the yard in it. But I think people will always, you can't really avoid the big mustard stain. Now, anytime people talk about the team, it'll be like this, but lost in the first round of Norfolk State. So it's a shame. If they had gone, even if they had lost to Florida, as long as they didn't lose the first game, I think people would have really looked more fondly upon the season. Because, others have made this point, but I think you would have to look at it now as probably not even the best Missouri team in the last 4 years. That's how much difference one game can make.
It's true, and you all of a sudden go from a team that was on track, as I said, to being arguably the best team in school history, and now just over the last 4 years, you're talking about a 2009 team that went to the Elite Eight, which is something only 3 other Missouri teams had done, that also won the Big 12 tournament title, that was almost as big a surprise as this team, if not as big a surprise, and they won 31 games, and really on their last game, they took a Connecticut team that was pretty good and played them pretty close and had the lead late. Missouri was really behind all the way, or most of the way, against Norfolk State, and just didn't play anything close to the best we'd seen them this season.
Okay, so Missouri loses 5 scholarship seniors from the 7-man rotation. So just judging by that, there's a lot to replace going into next year. But they do have some transfers, get Lawrence Bowers back, etc. Just maybe if you were to peg it right now, where would you think they would be ranked, or would they be ranked going into next season?
I think they've got a good shot to be ranked, and I think it'll be somewhere maybe similar to where they were ranked at the start of this year, where they opened the year 25. I think somewhere in the 20 to 25 range would be realistic. Obviously, they lose a lot. You're talking Marcus Denman's going to be a consensus All-American. Missouri has not had that many of those, and he's a 2-time first-team All-Conference player. It's going to be hard to replace his production. I think it's going to be really hard to replace what Ricardo Ratliff gave you as a post presence, setting the school single-season record for field goal percentage. And it's going to be hard to replace what Kim English did for them this year as a wing scorer. He had a phenomenal year. Averaged a career high in points. Shot it as he was really one of the best shooters in the country from 3-point range. So those are the 3 biggest pieces to replace. I think they're in a good spot at point guard, which is such an important position with Phil Pressey and Mike Dixon coming back. I think getting Lawrence Bowers healthy will give them a building block along the front line. He's a different kind of player than Ratliff, though. He's not really going to be a back-to-the-basket, true underneath scorer, and so I think that's going to be hard to identify somebody else to fill that role.
But a better defender.
But yeah, he is a better defender, and I think they'll be able to do a better job of protecting the rim than they were able to do this year. And honestly, they're going to have more depth. They're going to have more size, and that's going to give Frank Haith and his staff more options. I think they've got 3 transfers who are obviously sitting out right now who I think a lot is going to be expected of, because otherwise you're going to be leaning on a lot of freshmen. But Keon Bell and Ernest Ross are two guys who have produced at the Division I level before. They're not guys who've had a lot of team success at the Division I level, but if they're able to buy into being guys who can fill roles, they've got talent. Keon Bell was really a prolific scorer at Pepperdine, and Ernest Ross, I think, is a guy who Missouri really could have used this year, just because I think he's a guy who will do a lot of little things. He's a great rebounder for a guard or small forward. I think those guys will fill important roles. Jabari Brown is another guy who will get second semester, and I think he could probably fill some of the scoring load that they lose with Denman on the wing. He's not going to be Marcus Denman right away, though. I think that will be asking a lot.
I think maybe the biggest question is, I think they're going to potentially have as much or more talent. I don't know. You might argue that. It's whether, but I think kind of what made this team good this year was maybe some more chemistry type things. Whether that will be the same, you always wonder a little bit when you're dealing with a bunch of transfers and infusing them. The one thing in Missouri's favor, though, as far as the chemistry goes, I think if you have a good point guard distributing the ball, then chemistry issues sometimes kind of take care of themselves. Everybody's getting the ball, everybody's happy. And Missouri's got the point guard situation figured out quite well. So I'm pretty optimistic about how good Missouri's going to be next year. I mean, they're not going to be, it would be way too much to ask to think they're going to have another season like they did this year. But, I mean, I think they could potentially be a top 15 type team, maybe better.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw just Missouri fans have seen for a long time how important the point guard position is. When you go back to some of the Quinn Snyder teams, all the talent they had at other positions, guys who weren't necessarily elite after college, but were really good college players, and they just didn't have the guy to make it all fit together. And clearly, Phil Pressey, I think, is that guy. He had a phenomenal year, led the Big 12 in assists, and set the school single season assist record. And just a dynamic player, and I would expect he's only going to get better with another year of seasoning, and obviously he's going to be really important to anything they do from here on out.
He had one guy in the whole Missouri roster that picked to come back next year. I'm not sure Frank Haith wouldn't have picked Phil Pressey.
I think you're probably right, just because it's so hard to find that position, and when he's on, and he was on a lot this year, he really proved time and again he can control the game and dominate the game. I thought he really did that in Kansas City, as good as Kim English was, and he was fantastic. Pressey had 3 really strong performances in a row, and I think
he was good against Norfolk State too.
He was too, and he can fix a lot of problems when he's playing well, because he's able to do a lot of different things, setting guys up, making shots, and he's an inconsistent shooter, but I think that's something he can improve on over this offseason. Okay,
then lastly, let's just look ahead with their scholarship situation and recruiting situation. What's coming in next year that people don't already know about?
Well, they've obviously got the 5 guys who signed early, and they've got 2 scholarships available for the spring. Frank Haith said on Monday that they would like to use both of those scholarships, whether it's on an impact guy who can come in right away, or whether it's taking a shot on another transfer, as they did a lot this year. I think they'd love to have another post player. They've got a lot of size in the incoming class already, but having an impact big man, because, again, I don't think if you look at the guys they have on their roster projected for next year, there's a guy who you can say will do what Ricardo Ratliff did this year and average, about 14 points, average 7.5 rebounds. I think there's a lot of value in having a guy like that who can occasionally command a double team, who can finish around the rim, and I think they need to look for that. They've also got a shot, it appears, at Devontae Pollard, who's been on an official visit here, who's been on an unofficial visit here. He's one of the 10 top-rated recruits in the country. He's a small forward, would give them some nice size on the wing, 6'7", maybe would play a little bit of a face-up forward that in Missouri's system. It remains to be seen, but that would be a really good get for them. I think it's too early to know exactly what direction they're going to go, but if they could get Devontae Pollard, they'd obviously love to have him. And then I think I wouldn't be surprised if they try to add one more big guy.
All right. Well, Steve, thank you for many webcasts this year. Join us again next October when we will talk about the 2012-2013 season.